So I'm here in my personal capacity, and I am glad to be here. And also, I'm not a doctor. I hope to be one, but I'm not a doctor yet. My name is Kenneth Igiri, and in 2019, I questioned myself. I questioned myself about what all the experience and all the learning and all the schooling that I had means to me. Is it just to get the next job, right? So I decided to start something called the interactive ideation session, which is basically a strategy session for emerging entrepreneurs. I'm talking about those who are, starting to get into the realm some of you already are in, whether you are starting a business, a full-fledged startup, SME. So we use for big businesses in my career. I've been in IT for over 20 years, for almost 20 years. Some of those tools, they make sense in those contexts. So I asked myself, how do I make them make sense for someone who doesn't know what the word entrepreneur means, for someone who doesn't know what the word, what other word do we speak in business terms here? Value, or what do you call it again? Pitch. Somebody who doesn't know those things. I try to simplify it in my interactive ideation session, and I like some of the thoughts that were shared earlier about that dichotomy between formal and informal. Our reality is different from the West. The West has built some of their systems for centuries. So if you try to carry something in the academic sector and dump it on us, as it is today, you might have challenges. So we try to, sit with individual entrepreneurs to say, what is your reality? And how can we make it work for you? How can we help you make it work? I'm so thankful that we had an academic here as well who said he is involved in reading about things, in quote, that don't concern him. It reminds me about a conversation I was having with Dr. Faith Nwobia, who is sitting here, Utidia, about the fact that Messi is more popular than all the 3 coaches that coached him. Do you know that? Who are his 3 coaches? Name 3 of them. Who can name 3 of them? But the point is that he is more popular than any of his coaches, right? He's probably richer than many of his coaches, right? So in this world that we are in, there are people that play different roles to advance society. Not all of us have to be mega wealthy. Not all of us have to be mega famous, right? But we have to play our roles to advance society. So some of us have to play the roles of an academic, like the professor. Some of us have to play the roles of coaches, and that's what I do. Some of us have to play other roles. Otherwise, there will be no balance in society. So I just want to encourage you, if you find your place, what we do is strategy. Strategy is about positioning. Roger Martin calls it playing to win, or first of all, where to play and how to win, which means identify based on your strengths, based on your realities, your environment, where is the best place that will give you the maximum advantage. So that's basically what we try to do, because we know not everyone can be super mega like Elon Musk, right? Not everyone can be like Money Point, but there is a place for you, and we help you to identify that place. So that's a little bit about me and my background. There's a word I want you to remember in this short speech as I enter into what I want to share with you. Say it again. Everybody say fat. The first one is fortunate. I want to tell you that as a young person, most of you are below the age of maybe 30, 35. Am I correct? So you are fortunate. You're in a fortunate generation. There are many reasons, but I'll just point out a few. First of all, you're fortunate to have all the problems you have. He doesn't agree with me. You're fortunate to have problems because the problems are an opportunity for you to deploy your skills. You're fortunate to have problems because, do you know that many people around the world are moving towards Africa, right? Because that is where the problems to solve are. Those who are running here, those who want to make impact. Those who want to jackpot and leverage what other people have solved is the different audience, right? There are those who want to go and enjoy problems that have been solved. That's a different set of people. I'm talking about those who want to now make impact, make history, and influence the future. They're looking for where the problems are. So you're fortunate that you have a set of problems around you, threats around you, and we've identified those things as opportunities. So that's fortunate. The second thing that makes you fortunate is that you're living in a digital age. I schooled in Futo. If I wanted money from my parents, I would take a night bus and sit on a what do you call it? There's a stool that you sit in the middle so that you save money. Night bus. Attach, yes, thank you very much. You see, some of you have never heard that word before, right? You sit on a night bus, sit in the middle, yeah, and then you travel overnight because you need to save your last penny so that you can collect money. It's either that happens or somebody comes from wherever they are to visit you, right? So, but in your case, you make the call. What do you call it now? Transfer, right? You do transfer. And it's you can even call 10 uncles and say, I'm dying. Meanwhile, you're living very large. Say, I'm dying. Then 10 uncles will transfer 10,000 to you, right? Then you say, yes, I'm a smart guy, you know. But you see, you're living in a digital age. So many things are easier to do. Business is easier to do. And that's why we talk about, in my space, bootstrapping. I come from the computing world. When you turn in a computer, bootstraps. It starts itself. It doesn't need external capital. Right? It doesn't wait for $100,000 from whoever in order to start moving. Because it has certain advantages in its design. And I'm saying that you have certain of those advantages in your generation that you can go on a platform. I'm giving you practical examples now. Call Canva and say, I want to learn how to design. And when I learn it, I take a paid subscription for maybe $12 a month. And I go out there and tell people, I can design your complimentary card for, you charge maybe what, $5,000 to do it. $5,000 to do for each person. You can pay for your Canva. You can do flyers. You can do, without having a shop, without having a lot of capital, without raising funds, you bootstrap. I could give many other examples, but my time is up, and I'll just finally say, in fact, I have two or three more things to say. The second A is attitude. The third letter there is T, tenacity. Today we'll talk about consistency, because you're in a social media generation, right? Have you heard the word consistency before? But I have another word for you, tenacity or resilience. Being consistent in the midst of difficulty, right? That is an attitude you build. There are other attitudes like timekeeping, attitudes like customer experience, because those are things that set you apart on our continent, right? They can set you apart. I won't elaborate on them because of time. I don't want Ali to stand too much. Finally, I know I will say finally like another 5 times before I sit down. Yes, it's part of the speech. Yes, yeah. All right. So I will not elaborate on that because of time. There are some things I've picked up from today's conversation which I want to close my session with. SMEs must aggregate. The structure of an SME is not the same as a startup which can scale, like you move from today to 100,000 global Facebook. And there can only be very few startups of that nature. The rest of us must be the 95% that Prof talked about. So there has to be some kind of aggregation. Aggregation in many forms. Example of forms is you are aggregating to consume consulting services or accounting services or legal services, which means I, as a person, I can't pay a lawyer by myself, but I can bring together 5 other emerging entrepreneurs, I will make one lawyer our common lawyer. You share the cost, right? Because you want to succeed profitably. There are so many other ideas you could do that with. You have to aggregate. You have to aggregate even in terms of production. I told people in Ghana who are doing shea butter, everybody does shea butter. Well, the only time they sell their shea butter is when we come for conferences like this. So I asked, can you please aggregate and say, look, we want to supply 10,000 packs of shea butter with one brand name to some company in the US or Europe. Because it makes sense. All you have to do is to standardize the input, the output. Tell every player in that aggregation that this is what we expect to be in that shea butter. Produce it. Let me do the branding and packaging. Forget about your big name you want to make and make money first. So the Africa SME Assembly is driving that kind of aggregation. Aside from the event, there is the practice of aggregation. I want to make this statement. I don't want you to forget. It's from one of my admired seniors, Roger Martin. He said, knowledge upon which you can take no action is hardly worth having. So don't gather here and just go and say, wow, that was wonderful, awesome. Then you take all the facts, these things. You ask yourself, which specific information can I translate to value in my life? I will give you a simple example. We've mentioned LinkedIn here. Of all the panelists that you've seen, can you select one to sit with, to connect with, to listen to mentor you? Because when you do that, you go deeper than whatever can be said here. Are you there? Are you there? Knowledge is capital. And aside from knowledge being capital, we always think of money being capital. Time is also capital. You can never recover time. You can recover money. So think about those aspects of capital. Time, talent, and treasure. So plus for treasure. Thank you, Treasure, for organizing.